History and Culture podcasts are a production of PCN, a nonprofit television network. Listeners like you make our programming possible. To learn more about PCN's mission and to support PCN with a donation, visit pcntv.com. This link and others can be found in our show notes. We appreciate your support.
Welcome to PCN's History and Culture podcast. I'm Phil Beckman. This podcast series features interviews exploring Pennsylvania's rich history from the colonial era to industrialization, the Gettysburg Campaign to sports history, and from art to politics and more.
Today we are joined by Bryan Colvin, Mercyhurst University and Ridge archivist. Mercyhurst University has an archive dedicated to Tom Ridge. How significant is this collection?
The collection came here in 2013. It was donated by Tom and Michelle as a way of bringing the collection and his time back to Erie, since his life in Erie was so important to him. It's quite a large collection. It's over 1.1 million documents, 3,000 audio visual items, 10,000 photographs, 1,500 artifacts, and more is being added to it every year. The official name of the archives is Thomas J. and Michelle Ridge Collection. And I'd say since 2013, we've probably added at least 5,000 additional documents and photographs. So it's constantly expanding. I'm actually going later this week to pick up his congressional desk and some more documents. It's going to continue to expand over the course of the next probably 10 years.
So before we dive into the archive itself, let's talk a little bit about Tom Ridge's life, specifically his early life. What was his upbringing like in Erie, Pennsylvania?
So he was actually born in Munhall, Pennsylvania in 1945. They moved to Erie when his father, Thomas Regis Ridge, received a job. He was a traveling salesman and Navy veteran who received a job offer to come to Erie, and his parents were very excited about being in Erie and having a strong sense of community. So they moved when Tom was about 2 years old. He was raised in veteran housing. His dad really liked the job in Erie. Tom has always said that it's been a fabulous place to grow up, lots of kids everywhere. Anytime he wanted to play baseball or do anything, there was always a bunch of kids around. And he really liked growing up here. It's a strong sense of community and family. He was educated at St. Andrew's Elementary School and Cathedral Prep School here in Erie. He was very big into sports, did pretty well in school. His mother, Laura Ridge, and Tom were also very big into pushing him to do well in school, to be a good debater, to have open conversation, pretty much setting him up for a life of public service that he has. And Cathedral Prep really helped him with that. Very strong family, very loving environment. He has a brother and a sister who also was very nurturing where he grew up. He overall, I think this is where he got his good heart and his good spirit. And Tom's parents really, Tom Ridge's parents really pushed him into what would be a life of service by really shaping his values with a Catholic education early here in Erie.
Besides his family really kind of encouraging him to go into leadership, were there any early experiences that shaped his interest in public service?
Well, he's very interested in debate club and stuff like that. He thought that was interesting, trying to push for the ideas of the larger group. I really believe that helped him push him into politics.
And you mentioned his early schooling in elementary school, but where does Tom Ridge end up going to college?
He ends up going to Harvard for undergrad, and he studies American government, and then later going to law school at Dickerson to study law. A really good story I like about him going to Harvard is that once he got into Harvard, he was excited about it, of course, but he knew the financial burden that was going to be placed on his family for them to be able to send him to Harvard. So he went to his dad, and his dad was super proud that he was able to get into Harvard. And he asked his dad, would it be okay if I go to Harvard? And his dad remembered that. His family's talked about how his dad remembered that until the day he died, because he was so touched that he asked him, he didn't just say he wanted to do it. Like most kids would just be like, I'm going to Harvard, you figure it out. No, he was cognizant of the issues that it would create for the family of him going to such an expensive school and what they had to do in order to achieve this.
How did his time at Harvard prepare him for a career in politics?
So he studied American government. He excelled in his education at Harvard. He was an excellent student. He always demonstrated strong academic performance. He graduated with honors in 1967 and showed his commitment and capability in coursework. He always also knew that he wanted to be a lawyer, so he knew that wasn't the last step. Um, that's all I have for that.
What does he end up doing following the graduation at Harvard?
So, following the graduation at Harvard, he is accepted into law school. He starts law school. He gets 1 year in, doing very well, and then he's drafted to join the Vietnam War that's going on at the time.
What do we know about his time serving in Vietnam?
So he served as a staff sergeant in South Vietnam, where he served for about 6 months with the Army's 23rd Infantry Division from November 1969 to May 1970. He was awarded the Bronze Star in recognition of his service. He was recognized for his valor as an infantry staff sergeant and recognized for his actions in a firefight. He said that basic training was pretty hard before going off to the war, and that he was made fun of all the time because what was a Harvard grad doing going off to this war? And he would always say, I guess I wasn't very smart. And they'd say, well, no, because all the other Harvard grads got out of it. But, he was there serving, doing his part, doing what he thought was best for the country. Um, believe he had appendicitis is what actually got him out after the battle. He had severe pain. He wanted to go forth and continue, but because needing surgery, and the surgery back then was a little bit tougher than what it is now, they had to pull him from the battlefield.
How did his military service influence his later political career?
Well, I think he had a more of appreciation of what veterans would need, whether that was through different bills that he would sponsor or things like that. He had a sense of duty and connection to others. I think that always led to him continuing and doing a good job in politics.
And following his service in the Army, what does he end up doing?
He goes back to law school. He graduates, I believe, in 1972. And then shortly after that, he returns to the Erie area to enter private practice around 1972. He continues in private practice and later becoming a district attorney in Erie in the 1980s, where he prosecuted 86 cases within 2 years.
And before his time in Congress, he gets married. Who does he marry?
So he marries Michelle Ridge, who I'm blanking on what her maiden name was. I believe Moore, but I could be wrong. Before his time in Congress, before he actually sets up and becomes district attorney, he marries Michelle in 1979. Michelle's a very awesome person. She's very gentle, kind. They had dated prior to him going, or between one of the years when he was in Harvard before going to Vietnam. They kind of dated. She kind of broke up with him in between those periods because she was worried about him going off to war and everything that was going on. Upon him moving back, they started to become connected again. And you could just tell that they loved each other. They had a very passion for each other. They would come back together. Mrs. Ridge was here. She was a director of the Erie County Library at the time, and she always believed that her career was to be most important, and so did Tom. So later, when she became First Lady of Pennsylvania, and the numerous public appearances and causes she had, one of the causes that she really pushed for was children's literacy because of her time as a librarian and also for breast cancer.
Does the archives at Mercyhurst University have anything relating to Michelle and her work?
Yes. So the Ridge collection has both Tom Ridge and Michelle Ridge. So we have everything that she would have accomplished in their public life from the time of her being first lady of Pennsylvania, um, into a little bit of when he goes in the Department of Homeland Security, but most of the time is when she's first lady of Pennsylvania.
Let's get back to Tom Ridge himself. What kind of work does he do prior to entering Congress?
Yeah, so prior to entering Congress, he is a dedicated um, lawyer, really towards the last 2 years, focusing on being a district attorney in Erie and prosecuting cases, really showing that he wants to be hard on crime and getting ready basically to run for office.
Were there any key mentors that kind of came alongside him and encouraged him to run for office?
He worked on the Bush campaign for president before Reagan won. And working in that campaign really pushed him for the ideal that he wanted to serve in public office. The people he met at the time, in general, they're not one specific person, but just the working for the campaign really pushed him to want to work in public office.
Do we know what inspired him to transition from private life to politics?
I think it was the belief that he could help people. Like he just genuinely wanted to be a good person and help as many people as he possibly could. And seeing how a campaign actually works and knowing how connected he was to the Erie area, that he really wanted to be able to help the people in Erie.
Well, when does he end up running for Congress?
So he ends up running for Congress in the early 1980s, around 1982, I believe he ran for Congress. Um, he's not expected to win when he runs. It's a long shot. Like people knew of him but didn't know of him on a wider scale in order to be victorious in an election. It was a very close race. I believe he won by 700 and some votes. So it was a very close race here, and he was just not well known, but his message, the things he wanted to do for the people, really got across that he was gonna make a difference, and that's what people wanted to hear.
What were some of Ridge's major legislative priorities during his time in Congress?
I would say the biggest legislative priority was the Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act. Um, the only reason his name is not the Ridge Act is because he worked bipartisanly to get this plan done. So in the late 1980s, there was a tornado that swept through Erie County and caused a lot of devastation. And he was really disappointed with how hard it was, the red tape for the people to get help. So he wanted to do whatever he could to help make this process a little bit easier. And he thought that FEMA could do a better job in disaster response. And this was one of his enduring legacies as Congress, is getting this act passed, because then he moved on to see other hurricanes and other disasters around the country. And why did this take so long? If someone needed housing or they needed assistance, and this is what the program is for, why did it take so long to achieve this assistance? People lost everything. They shouldn't have to fill out all this paperwork. So he did his best to make it as easy as he possibly could to get funds.
In 1995, he serves as governor of Pennsylvania. What was his time like as a governor?
So his time as governor was, he promised to make Pennsylvania a leader among states and a competitor among nations. That was the vision that he delivered. I believe that his time as governor was very successful. He implemented aggressive technological strategy to advance the economic development, education, health, and environmental activities. He cut taxes every year that he was in office. He led the industry in greenhouse initiatives, advancing computing and life sciences and education. He signed the Education Empowerment Act, which supported 250,000 children in Pennsylvania with the lowest performing schools. He expanded educational technology. I remember seeing a video where he goes in and he really brings more computers and stuff into schools, games, and anything to get children interested in what would be the future. He increased the number of children receiving the low-cost CHIP program by 145%. So it gave healthcare to low-income families and to children that needed it. Land recycle program. He really believed in growing greener, having Pennsylvania be the largest environmental impact, and invested nearly $650 million into that. Really, for a Republican governor, if we look back, it seems different, but he was very on the cutting edge, trying to do whatever he can for technology and the environment and education as much as he possibly could.
How does his time as governor of Pennsylvania prepare him for his later federal role?
Well, I think his time of overseeing statewide security, emergency management, and technology modernization, and getting the federal agencies together like he does in Department of Homeland Security, he was doing that as part of Pennsylvania. So he was already starting to be like, you can't be an independent agency to yourself. You all have to work together. So building communications and being a bipartisan leader that he learned in Congress and as governor really helped him prepare for the role as Department of Homeland Security.
How does he earn that role in the newly formed Department of Homeland Security?
So President George Bush was a friend of his. He was rumored to be a running mate of George W. Bush. It didn't actually happen, but he was on the short list. So when it became time that 9/11 happened, and of course Shanksville happened here, he was a big presence on TV helping with security issues at the time. The Bush administration had recognized that and thought that he would be good as the first Homeland Security advisor, and then later becoming the first U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security. In the role, like it was an act that was passed in 2002, and it was for him to be the first Homeland Security, and it was mainly bringing together all these different agencies, all their infrastructure, in a way that communicated with each other to help protect the homeland. And I think he did an excellent job, and his whole career preparing for disasters and wanting to make things easier played towards this role.
As you mentioned, he was named in this position after the 9/11 attacks. What were some of his major priorities in strengthening the national security following this major event?
Well, the major first task was getting the 22 separate federal agencies, which had a culture of their own and their own system and their own computer system, to come together and talk to one another. Um, During 9/11, the FBI had some information about the attackers. The CIA had information. The NSA had information, but they didn't communicate it together. If all the information would have been in one central system and communicated, maybe the attacks wouldn't have happened. So they realized that early on, and they knew that they needed to have some kind of brand new infrastructure to improve the sharing of intelligence across agencies. You couldn't operate in a silo anymore. You had to be better prepared. He also knew that you had to strengthen the border and transportation and cybersecurity systems, which were outdated and very fragile. He knew early on that cybersecurity was going to be the future. And because he knew it so early on, he helped to invest in it early. He also established better national strategy to help prevent terror attacks. One of the funny things that I remember growing up, I was 13 or 14 while this was happening, was that he established the color codes. It was like a code orange day or a code yellow day. It was just a system to say, this is the chance of an attack. And we went all the way up to code red, and I think it went down to like a code blue if everything was fine. And he was implemented this system. It was made fun of a lot on Saturday Night Live and systems like that. But it also let people know that, hey, we're aware, we're paying attention. This is what's going on. He was also part of the campaign, the see something, say something. So if you saw something strange, you were to report it to your government officials, the police, so on and so forth, to try to make the world safe. He became the face of protecting the United States after 9/11.
Following his role in the Department of Homeland Security, what does he do?
So after he steps away from the Department of Homeland Security, he works on the Ridge Advisory Foundation. It's like a lobbying group where he helps different businesses and stuff move forward with lobbying the government for different issues and stuff. He also does many charities and pretty much pretty much a private citizen now. Doesn't really do much in government. He'll do interviews if asked, but very rarely.
And you've been thrown in a few memories of Tom Ridge as a kid. Is there anything when you look at his life that stands out to you personally?
It's kind of surreal for me because I remember growing up, he was the governor that I could first remember there actually being a governor. My my grandmother was a huge fan of his, and thought that he was, even my grandfather, who was a Democrat. My grandmother was a Republican, and my grandfather was a Democrat. And even my grandfather was like, "Oh, Tom Ridge, he's a great governor." And I remember, like, as I'm growing up and learning about politics and certain things like that, I thought it was interesting. And then when I got this job, my grandmother was so excited. She's like, "You're actually going to meet him?" I'm like, "Yeah." And so that was fun. And then seeing his career, like I remember watching him after 9/11 on TV, talking about the attacks, and a calming presence, a calming voice. It was a scary time. And then seeing him in the Department of Homeland Security, and how they dealt with trying to keep us safe. Like, he was a key figure that was there for a while, um, into like after the disaster. And I was 13 when it happened. Growing up south of Pittsburgh, like probably like an hour and a half away from Shanksville, like it, and watching it on TV, it was a scary time. And to have such a person that we knew from Pennsylvania that was in charge of protecting us, I mean, it made me as a kid feel good.
What inspired the creation of the Tom Ridge Archives at Mercyhurst University?
So he really wanted the archives to be held here in Erie, more than at the or at the state archives, because he believed that his deep ties to Erie, he wanted to have his material here for forever. It really comes to Mercyhurst because Mercyhurst has the intelligence program, the Ridge School of Intelligence, and so it just made a natural fit, to recognize Ridge for his significant contributions to Pennsylvania and to national security. He wanted it to live in Erie, and Mercyhurst was known and is still known as having one of the best national security programs, intelligence programs in the nation. So it just made sense that his archives would come here.
With such a large archival collection, how do you organize and acquire these items?
So everything's acquired by donations from Tom and Michelle Ridge or people connected to the Ridge government. It's organized by time of service. So, like, his first public service, it's organized by public service. His first time in public service is as congressman. So we have from the time he took office in Congress all the way up till he decides to run for governor. Then we have his campaign material, then his time as governor, and then his time as Department of Homeland Security. Same with Michelle, all the way through. Photographs and videos and awards and stuff are a separate part. But what we try to do is do it based on date and time that he was in office, and that's how we organize it. Because you think, as someone's going to come and they're going to ask for material, they're probably going to say, when he was governor, he did this, or when he was in Congress, he did this, and that just makes it easier to try to find what the material is. Um, and we also have display cases on the main floor of the library that highlight the public service of both Tom and Michelle. And that was one of the big things that we do that some other governor collections in other universities don't do, is that we make it more available to the public, and we showcase it more than what the archive's not locked away. It's not hidden. It's open to the public.
What legacy has Tom Ridge left behind in Mercyhurst?
He has left behind a legacy of public service. The idea that students who are in Ridge College of Intelligence Studies and Applied Sciences uses the collection for research and coursework. They're learning constantly all the time about lifelong commitment to public service. The collection being in Hammermill is a presence in the lives as students are working of his dedicated service as a soldier, a prosecutor, a congressman, governor, first secretary of Homeland Security. It reinforces the Mercyhurst values of integrity, responsibility, leadership, and service that aligns with both his own mission and the missions of the sisters and Catherine McCauley to be good today, but better tomorrow. He really believed in the fact that we could always do better. And I think it's a reminder to the students that even if you're from a small town and you don't know what you're going to do, that doesn't mean you can't make an impact. You definitely can. If you're focused, you can make an impact, you can make a difference, and things can be better. Don't sell yourself short. And it's every single day it's a reminder to students as they study in the library. They're looking at his life and what he's done.
We've been speaking with Bryan Colvin, Mercyhurst University and Ridge archivist. Thank you.
Thank you.
Listeners like you make PCN programming possible. Full episodes of PCN's history and culture content, like the interview you just heard, are available to stream with the PCN Select app. Explore other documentary programs, event coverage, and a lot more. To learn more about PCN's mission and to support PCN with a donation, visit PCNTV.com. This link and others can be found in our show notes. We appreciate your support.